hearing this?
Anybody hear that?
How can we possibly have the slightest idea what to expect?
Well, we're back.
Hold on to your butts.
Welcome to the Jurassic Park Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Jost, and we're here to discuss all things Jurassic, including the movies, TV shows, music, toys, and more. In episode 424, we're going to be diving into the bonus features from Jurassic World Rebirth. So shout out to my good buddy Phil. I was able to watch the special features and dive through everything there. There's deleted scenes, there's featurettes, a ton of them, and there's the 2 featured commentaries and some really, really great stuff in there. I actually had a great time with these special features, and I think they're better than a lot of the normal ones that we get. So they're pretty good. So I'm gonna dive into everything there, talk about all of them a little bit, so you kind of get a sense of them. And I don't know if you've watched them or not, but I would say, watch all of these special features before doing the commentaries, because once you do that, once you dive into the commentaries, it's great to have the visual guide kind of for the things that everybody's talking about in the commentaries. So you get to see a lot of things that they discussed in the commentaries. You get to see how things were made and where they went, and you get to see all the work that went into it. Talk about the gimbals and the giant pools in Malta and stuff like that. So I think getting that kind of context is pretty good. So watch all the special features, featurettes, and then dive into the commentaries. But there's some really good stuff in there, and I'll be discussing all of those details in due time here. But of course, while you're listening to this episode, hit us up on Blue Sky to continue the conversation. And as always, please check out our live streams over on YouTube, discussing all of the latest Jurassic news from around the world, Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. EST. Also, please be sure to subscribe to my newsletter for all things Jurassic whenever I go ahead and do that. I also talk about movies, TVs, not just TVs, but TV shows, my podcast, and other thoughts and appearances. So find the link to the newsletter on JurassicParkPodcast.com/newsletter. Also, please go ahead and call our voicemail line, 732-825-7763, or you could email your voice memos or your thoughts to JurassicParkPod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the digital copy that you got. I'm sure you got it, right? You did, right? Or are you waiting for the 4K? You might be waiting for it. And hey, once you do, let us know and tell me what you thought about the special features and the commentaries and all that stuff. How are you feeling about the movie now after a little while? What is it? It's only been I guess it's been almost 2 months now. So tell me how you're feeling about that, or the video game announcements that have been happening nonstop and all the other stuff that's going on. So we'll feature those in an upcoming Jurassic mailbag, hopefully pretty soon. But that's all I have for the intro, so let's go ahead and dive into some thoughts on the bonus features for Jurassic World Rebirth. For me, one of the best times as a film fan and a fan of a huge franchise like Jurassic, one of the best times for me is the release of the DVDs, the 4Ks. In my case, we're going back to VHS tapes with the bonus tape that had all kinds of new material on there. And now, we've got the digital copy out for Jurassic World Rebirth. And the 4K does release on September 9th, so it is just around the corner as of this recording. But the digital copy is out there, the digital release, and it does feature all the bonus material for Jurassic World Rebirth, and we get to learn a lot more about the movie and get some real good insight from the cast, the crew, whether it's the featurettes that are on there or the bonus commentary and some deleted scenes and things. So there's a lot of good material, I think, that came out of the bonus features for Rebirth, and some of it actually made me appreciate a lot more of those things that maybe I was struggling with, or just maybe not actually, maybe just made me appreciate the movie a little bit more. I had the chance to, like I said, watch the movie again twice, which was great. But it did feature the commentary, which the first one was with Gareth Edwards, director, obviously, and then Jack Ravenscroft, who is the first assistant director, and then James Klein, who is the production designer. That was all for feature commentary number 1. Pretty great. We'll talk about that later on. And then feature commentary number 2, also with Gareth Edwards, and then editor Jabez Olson, I believe, and then visual effects supervisor and second unit director David Vickery. So both very good commentaries that actually dove into quite a bit of stuff, some overlap, but I was really thrilled to get 2 commentaries. That was really cool. And then to have, like I said, let's just dive into it. There's a few different things. We've got the alternate opening. We'll dive into these fuller in just a minute, but the alternate opening was there. Deleted scenes with raptors, deleted scenes with the Mutadon attack. There's a bunch of featurettes. The World Evolves, Off the Deep End, Trekking Through Thailand, Rex in the Rapids, Don't Look Down, Mini Mart Mayhem, The Gag Reel, Meet Dolores, Munched, Becoming Dino Food, A Day at Skywalker Sound, Hunting for Easter Eggs, and then there was a trailer. So a lot of good stuff on there, to be honest. And I'm usually fairly critical of bonus features and stuff like that these days because, look, I mentioned it at the start of this, like, I grew up in the time where we're getting VHS tapes and double tapes of, like, really in-depth documentary, like, style footage that's not just a clip show with a soundtrack underneath it that's peppy and just keeps the ball rolling the entire time. That's what it mostly feels like these days, and there's some of that in this, but I do think, like, I long for the days of, like, really in-depth stuff that shows you the magic of the industry and shows you the real technical aspects of it and the troubleshooting and just shows you how the animatronics worked or how, the production design worked or the sound design or whatever the case may be, just really getting a good glimpse at that stuff. And I do think there was actually a decent amount of that here. It's still, kind of featurette-y where, they split this up. This could have been like a 45-minute documentary, but they split it up into multiple features, I guess. I don't know. We're all distracted these days, and we can't watch something for too long. But I appreciated it because I thought it was a lot better than some of the usual ones. So like I said, I just want to take a walk down all of the different featurettes and give you my thoughts and feelings on them. And we will touch on spoilery details from those featurettes, deleted scenes and whatnot. So if you want to go in completely fresh when you dive into them, if you have not already, I understand, come back and listen later. But if you have and you want to hear me talk about them for a little bit, I'll give you some insight, talk about them here and there. I'm not going to give you a full rundown of each and every bit of information, especially for things like the commentaries. There were some noticeable details that I pointed out, so I figured we'll dive into them. All right, so first up, we have the alternate opening, which, we've heard them talk a little bit about this, whether it's the Q&As and things that they've had. Gareth Edwards has spoken about this, that there was this alternate opening that featured a big kind of I forget what they call it, but just a big machine that kind of just takes down the forest, is cutting through, and kind of paving way for new expansion of this island. And you get to see a few workers rolling through and walking down there, and it cuts to like a shot of a wider shot of the machinery, but also things like cranes and pipes being laid down, and then we get to see that helicopter fly in. So it's an alternate opening. It's more of an expanded opening too, because it does feature the monkeys that we see and that same T-Rex spot that we see later on when the T-Rex attacks the family as they're going through those two last pillars of hope there, as they pray for survival. But we get to see that moment, which, as I've learned, is all digital entire opening. And the interesting part is, like, there's so much unfinished material in these, like, deleted scenes and alternate openings that it's nice to see, but, like, it doesn't do a ton for me because I like to see, like, the finished product. But, the idea is cool, seeing them expand this place, but it didn't really add much for me. So I'm kind of glad we got the opening that we did. We get the helicopter just bursting through the jungle. That was pretty cool. I really do like that. I think this would have worked pretty well if they had kind of simulated that, like what we see in the Lost World with the high hide, where they're up there high, hiding high up there in the high hide, and we get to see the jungle like kind of moving as the T-Rex is coming through the jungle. I think that would have been a cool simulation for that kind of thing if we get to hear like the trees fall and kind of do that simulated boom, boom. Like we're like, oh my god, a T-Rex is gonna go through the jungle right now, and then it's not. It's just this giant crawler just destroying things in front of it. But it would have been cool. But otherwise, I don't think we needed to see the expansion of this place, but then also the finished product kind of in a way where they, the helicopter flies over the construction and then goes to the nice facility. So to me, it didn't really add too much, but it is kind of cool to see. So the next one is actually a deleted scene again, the first one was an alternate opening, but this was a deleted scene that we've all been so curious about for the longest time, because for a while we heard about the Raptors, we saw the graphics, the stuff that they had made for party supplies or whatnot, and the Raptors looked really cool. And then of course we got the movie, and it featured like two Raptors kind of blurry in the background, and we had heard about these deleted scenes and heard a lot about the ideas of Raptors, but it doesn't seem like they were ever going to be utilized in any grand fashion. I do think there was some really good potential for a Raptor scene right here, but what we get in this deleted scene is not really a fully realized kind of moment. And this is actually, we did get to see part of the scene in the trailer where Xavier is like, please don't tell me those are Raptors. And Loomis, I think in the trailer does say they're Raptors. But I think in the deleted scene, he just says like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to tell you they're Raptors. Okay. But so they kind of come out of nowhere. The Raptors are, again, not very, not a finished product by any means. You do get to see the performers that are there. You get to see their legs and the Raptor heads that they're kind of wearing or holding onto or whatever it was. And so you do get to see that kind of behind the Raptors that they digitally created. So it's kind of like a work in progress for the Raptors. So you still don't really get that full visualized version that you really, really wanted. So that is disappointing. I was hoping for a very good looking version so we could finally be like, dude, those were the Raptors that we needed and always wanted. So unfortunately we didn't get that, but yeah, not too much happens. They basically just stalk the humans. They come down from that ramp, and then this is all at the convenience store. And the Raptors do end up getting scared away as Martin Krebs is like holding a gun, but it's not the gun that scares them away. It's not Dolores either, because Dolores does pop up here, and I don't think she pops up until the convenience store. Yeah, that's the first place she pops up again after the T-Rex encounter. So interesting scene. Not one that I think really added anything of value to it. I think there was an opportunity to do something really cool with the Raptors here, like a fight or something like that between the Mutodons. Like, I always kind of envisioned it like, the Raptors need payback, right, for the one that got killed earlier, and they hunt down the Mutodons to this location, and they kind of hunt and find the Mutodons and distract the Mutodons so that the humans can get away and go, hide and get out of there. But that didn't happen either. I think that would have been a good opportunity. But hey, Universal, call me up. Now we round out the deleted scenes with a pretty banger of a deleted scene there with the Mutodon attack. I really, really like this scene. It added so much tension, drama. The stakes were so much better, I think. And I really am mad now that this scene is not in the movie. This one, it kind of continues right where basically that Raptor scene would have left off, with the Mutodons coming in, I guess, to scare the Raptors away. But instead, in the movie itself, the Mutodon attack happens all very fast. It's very kinetic. It's they come in here and they go into the convenience store and they track down the humans there, and then one flies over and tries to catch the other people that are running away. And the convenience store scene happens fairly quickly. I mean, it does stalk them a little bit in there, of course. Steps on the soda bottles, stuff like that. But we get to see the Mutadon really fly in, and some of them are unaware. And Scarlet is there. Zora's picking up the phone. There's a payphone out front. Hey, everybody, there's a little thing called like a payphone or like a phone booth kind of thing that you used to have to put in like coins, and you would be able to call. But she picks it up and it's speaking. I forget what it was saying, but it was like kind of just saying like, yeah, it's delaying the inevitable. She's trying to get through to somebody, but it's just not working. And as she's standing there on the phone, she realizes the Mutadon is coming, and she like slowly hangs up quietly and goes around the corner and just stands against the little phone booth thing. And I love that. There's so much drama and tension there. I love that Martin Krebs is actually, he's like getting into the car and trying to look around for keys, so it gives some more value to him. And then you see him hide underneath, which is good because that connects to what we did see in the movie. Xavier's outside, kind of just standing there waiting. And everybody else is kind of scrambling around, trying to hide, trying to find some stuff to attack with. But Xavier, like I love this for Xavier because it gives him more reason to like the character, because he yet again does the thing that you wouldn't expect of him. He does that like I think maybe like two or three times in the movie itself, but like an added benefit would have been great here, to have him be like, hey, and just distract the Mutadon. He runs into the store, and that's basically where it picks up, right? From what we see in the movie. But I also like that the phone rings again. It calls back or whatever, and the Mutadon notices that and starts to stalk the phone, and that's when Xavier kind of, runs inside, distracts it from basically killing Zora. It would have absolutely eaten her right then and there. But I love the scene. There's so much drama, so much tension. It's a long scene. The music is actually really great there. And yeah, like I said, I'm kind of bummed that this is not actually in the movie. And it's, I don't know how long of a scene it is, but it's maybe 2 extra minutes or something like that, maybe 3 at the most. But I think we could have used it. It would have been fine. Nobody would have complained for an extra 3 minutes. It would have been great. It was also unfinished a little bit. It was more finished than the raptor scene, that's for sure. But you still did see the performer back there as the Mutadon. And some of the reflections and things were unfinished. Some of the Mutadon scenes were unfinished. But I think it was a pretty great sequence overall. And I would have rather had that in the movie than a deleted scene. So as far as the digital copy is concerned, it gives you a bunch of different featurettes. I do know that the 4K does list a making of documentary. So I'm wondering if these featurettes that we get on the digital copy, or maybe like a cut up version of what we get on the 4K, I don't know. Maybe that's all subject to change, who knows. But at least here for the digital copy, I'm going to go through all of these. The first one is The World Evolves. And this one's basically just kind of like a bit of a recap, kind of like giving you some introduction as far as what's going on with Jurassic Park, and then showing you a little bit about what Rebirth is going to be and what it's about. And that Scarlet was like really, really excited to read a David Koepp Jurassic Park script. And that there's just like it's kind of like a love fest. There's a lot of love for the cast members, which I love. I think that's pretty great. We get to see these characters or these cast interacting with each other and saying all the things they love about each other. It's pretty great. Like the 3 main leads, and I think Rupert was in there as well. But so the 4 of them are kind of talking about like, each other, Scarlett and Jonathan and Mahershala and Rupert. And then we also do get the family as well, talking about all the things that they love about each other. That was really sweet because everybody had great things to say about like Audrina, and there was like this really long handshake between David Iacono and Audrina, who plays the little girl in the movie. And I love that kind of stuff. So you do get to see some fun interactions between the cast members, what they were doing like in between takes and stuff like that. They were shooting some a little dark gun at each other and stuff like that. And also there was a really cool thing here. There was the mention of Toy Viz, which Gareth Edwards does, and it's basically like taking his phone and just kind of like filming what he thinks the shot should be in the movie. So, for instance, like taking a water bottle and a toy boat and just putting them side by side, and the water bottle is the mosasaurus, the boat is the boat, and just kind of going along and like holding his phone in a place that might be good to visualize, how this could come to life, or like a mini helicopter or car. I forget all the different versions he had, but there was a few different options there. Oh, one was the Quetzalcoatl scene. I forget what he used, but there was like a bird kind of like escalating up and then going up the cliff and chasing down Leclerc there. So that was really cool to see how they visualize everything. And so this is kind of just like a nice little, tone setter, I think, for the featurettes. And next up for the featurettes, we have one called Off the Deep End, which obviously is all about the water sequences from this film, which I think Scarlett notates that it was like 35 minutes of water scenes. I don't know if that's accurate fully or not, but at the time of her filming it was. And they show you everything, like everything that you'd want to see, the shooting of the scenes on the actual water, the shooting of scenes in a giant pool in Malta using a massive gimbal that apparently was like the first of its kind or something like that. So a lot of explanation as far as Malta and gimbals are concerned. So check that out. Also, just how much of a nightmare it was to probably shoot on the water. They had good intentions, it sounds like, but a lot of it maybe had to be moved to different kinds of sets and utilization and stuff like that. So sounds like it was a bit challenging for them, but they certainly made do. And I think the water sequences are like really, really incredible. And they do a lot of talk about the visuals and stuff like that, the special effects here with like just how good the water looks. That's like kind of indecipherable between real water and fake water, and you'll kind of never know, to the point where Gareth even questions what's real, which I thought was pretty cool. They do talk about, the boat that they use, the Mariposa, which is the sailboat that the family sailed in on, and there's like some nice little scenes with Manuel and Audrina there, just kind of talking about the boat, how cool it is, and just the different things that they had to do on the boat. So that was a nice little sequence. It kind of slowed down for a bit there. This one does have a little bit more of a fast pace, kind of clip showy at times, but I think they do give you some good information. They do talk a little bit about, kind of redesigning the mosasaur, reinventing it a little bit for the new age, and kind of giving it some new sounds, and a little bit about the Spinosaur, a little less, but they were kind of talking about how things have changed since Jurassic Park 3 with the Spinosaurs, and the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just like, yeah, but like, who cares? The Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3 is awesome. Let's just go with that. But they talk about trying to get it right. So there you go. But that is the Off the Deep End one. It's pretty good. It gives you a really good sense of what they did on the water. And the next one is called Trekking Through Thailand, which is pretty self-explanatory here. We get to see everything that went into kind of getting all the cast and crew out to Thailand at these real locations, which you can see in this little featurette that are really kind of expanded and kind of extended in a lot of ways. You got a real good palette there to start with, I think, and they expand it all so much. You get to see more mountains, more fields, more everything. But it's fantastic that they went to these real locations, and it seems like they really bonded over that, over the hours it took to drive and to boat there and to stay there, to hike, whatever the case was. That realism seems like it added like a nice bonding experience for everybody, and certainly added to the acting experience as well, because at times they didn't seem to have to act, it sounds like. There was some cool stuff about using the camera in the jungle and what kind of cool shots they were able to get and where to place the camera and stuff like that. They apparently shot this during monsoon season, which is seemingly not a great idea, but they did it anyway, which Gareth mentions due to the release date. So I think over the course of maybe not so much the featurettes, I think maybe that was one of the only times they mentioned it, but the commentary really shines a light on how quickly they needed to make this movie. They also talked about creating that grassy field that we saw 50,000 times before the release of the movie. They talk about the rifle that Zora uses just a little bit, and the titanosaurs. There's a good little chunk there about creating them visually and audibly and stuff like that, how they created that, kind of atmospheric sound, the discussion between the two titanosaurs. So some really good stuff there as well. But for 9 minutes or so, there wasn't a ton there, but I did enjoy seeing all those physical locations. I hope we get to, see more of that kind of stuff in Jurassic movies in the future. And now we're at the featurette called Rex in the Rapids, which obviously talks about the whole entire Rex scene and how they shot it in 3 different locations, out in Thailand, Malta, and then in the UK. It's honestly like kind of incredible that this scene worked at all. Like, especially comboing that with the discussions that we get in the commentary and just hearing like what's shot where, and it's pretty incredible. I don't know how they really made this look good at all. It's mind-boggling. But they talk about like what went into the shots in Thailand, about retrieving the raft and opening that up, and then getting the paddling scenes and all that stuff, and then moving to Malta and getting a lot of the underwater scenes, whether it was Ruben kind of dodging the T-Rex or Isabella underneath the raft, stuff like that. And then we get to see the shots that were at the Olympic Park out in London, which was like a rapids scene, the rapids section of the film, where we get to see the cast members just thrown into this freezing cold water and just probably hating the experience. And it looked very challenging in that freezing cold water and through the rapids. There's like, they had to add a lot of rocks and stuff into that, and obviously digitally change a lot of it. But there's like these humps underneath the water that I'm not even sure how they didn't hit those and just like knock their legs up a lot. But it looked wild. They actually had like a drone team come out to scan like parts of Thailand to digitally recreate these later on, these scenes, these locations, I guess, to put around them. Because especially the Olympic Park stuff, like I don't even know. It's wild what ILM was able to accomplish here. I don't get it, but it's really, really good, and it also showcases the T-Rex, a lot of like how they made that T-Rex, how they made it look like kind of like a new bull T-Rex, just bigger, scarier, more teeth. I don't know. No, maybe they didn't say that, but they talked a lot about the sound design and stuff, and kind of going back into the vault for the Jurassic Park T-Rex and just seeing what unused material they could maybe use in a different circumstance here. So that, I really wish we could get like a full dive into like that, because that's what I want to hear. I want to hear like that kind of stuff. These featurettes are good. They do showcase like a lot of insight, I think, but I wish they would just stop for 5 minutes and just show me, the people working on the sound and just what clips they have to dive into. I don't know, one of these featurettes, they talk about like 1 million sounds almost that they have to dive into. So I would love to hear some of those sounds, because that, to me, that's the real interesting thing doing audio here on the podcast, of like what goes into making all of those layers of sounds and stuff. So we do get some insight into that later on in a different featurette, but it's pretty cool to hear about how they wanted to go back to use some of that original source material for the T-Rex.
So we're standing right now on stage 10 at Sky Elstree Studios. In the background, we have our temple interior set made of wood and plaster and steel. We do all of this by hand, and we carve every little bit of foam that you see behind us and bring it up to this level. One thing that we really wanted to impress was this idea of time has kind of taken over here.
Maybe we should make this quick, huh?
You want to still feel like those root systems are crawling into every little corner, or that the stonework that we did in Thailand is applied exactly to the stonework that we do here on our stage. You can see moss kind of growing up the sides of all these pillars and water damage.
And they changed the way that they were doing it through a hose to like a brass or filament. There was like water leaking from the roof.
We've rigged it with sprinkler systems, so water can kind of cascade down like rain. We've got this beautiful kind of sunlight kind of beaming through all these little holes to give it a very kind of a natural vibe.
The temple set, it's like one of those moments where you feel like, oh my, they're doing a little homage to all of Spielberg's films, especially when Loomis was holding the egg and the light was shining in. I was like, wait a minute, which movie was shooting again?
But next up, we get to hear all about the temple scene and the Ketz scene from the featurette called Don't Look Down. And this one, they showcase a lot of the temple and how they created that. We get to see them actually like sculpting things, which is really cool, talking about matching it to some stuff that they did in Thailand versus the set that they built on the stage. So there's a lot of cool insight into that. And also seeing Scarlett learn how to like scale a wall was really cool. And getting that right, because it sounds like, you know, you'd expect Scarlett and her team to be, you know, top of the line. Like they know what they're doing. You're not going to see them make mistakes or see them look like they don't know what they're doing, because they're professionals and they do. So getting that all right and having the confidence to do that and say the right things is really cool. So I appreciated seeing that. Also, we get to see a lot of Bashir Sylvain here, who it was Leclerc in the movie, and I love that. I don't know if we get to see more of him here in this digital short than we do in the movie, but we get to see a lot of him and get to see his personality. So I really appreciated this featurette for that alone. We get to see Jonathan Bailey burst out of the water, time it according to, I think it was like 11 seconds or something, because they had to push in the camera and then have him pop out of the water at the right time, which is cool. We get to see, blending the set that they created, like a physical set of the top of the cliff base there, and then also showcasing like what the cliff looks on the sides and all the way down to the bottom, the entire jungle. They based it off of I guess a waterfall out in India, and then, you know, digitally extended what they created on set. So it sounds like really cool and complicated. And then of course we get to hear about creating the Ketz visually, but also the sound. And the sound, it was like wild. Like that's between the Titanosaur and the Ketz, those are two of my favorite like sound designs in any of these movies. So I really appreciated hearing the insight into those. And they use stuff like bone clacks and apparently alpacas being sheared. I didn't know how that fit into it, but see, that's what I want. I want to get the more insight into it. I want to spend a lot of time with them as they talk about alpacas being sheared and how that translates to what we heard in the Ketz scene. Because I don't know. Is it the shearing? Is it the zzz, or is the alpaca like, don't shear me? Like, I don't know. What is the sound? I want to know. But they also use leather flaps and stuff for the wings. So there's a lot of really good stuff that goes into this, and this was a fun one. I really dug this one.
When we got into that mini mart, the set design, it's insane, and every single detail is just to the T. Like, it really, really looks like a Jurassic film.
It takes me more back to like the first Jurassic Park. And that's what all of the cast is saying it feels like in here. And it feels very real. I go in the fridge, which is, I think that's pretty cool.
We've got a variety of different kind of VFX puppetry performance pieces. This is the muted-on head, which we've got actually on a helmet, which can be worn by one of our puppeteers, Ed Wood, who is on arm extensions, and then he is actually being the creature as it walks through the mini-mart. We are here to help the actors give authentic performances. So I found myself doing lots of dinosaur sounds and things to scare the actors or to just tell them where the creature is.
The next one, called Mini Mart Mayhem, actually I feel like it was a bit longer than some of the others, and actually featured credits at the end. I think that was a bit different than the others as well. This one obviously is all about the Mini Mart location, but also they expand upon that with the tunnels underneath that whole area, and then like the D-Rex, and they talk about the Mutodons and stuff like that. So, they start off by talking about, Gareth says, the whole line of this was the R&D for the original park, and Kep talks about, this facility working at the same time as the initial park, and that didn't really clear up anything for me. I'm still wondering, what park are we talking about here? What park? Because the way they talk about it and everything, it feels like the original park, like Jurassic Park. That's what it feels like to me. And even David Vickery later on mentions something about the D-Rex being the result of an experiment to create a dinosaur that's gone wrong. So, I mean, with that kind of mentality right there, that's what I wanted, right? The D-Rex to just be a T-Rex gone wrong. I think that would have been spectacular, like trying to make the original Jurassic Park T-Rex and it's just gone wrong. That's amazing. So, no clarification there. They do mention, David Kep says, Il Saint Hubert. So that's how we get to know the name a little bit better. I was always wondering, how do you say it? But they talk about the Mutodons, like I said, and we get to see a lot of the alternate designs and stuff. This seemed like, based off all the different conversations I've listened to, it sounds like this was the creature that took the longest to come up with. I think there's actually a timeline that I notate later on during the commentary, but yeah, this one went through so many renditions, all which look really, really incredible. Some of which, or most of which I'll say, look more like they're from the Godzilla universe than Jurassic, but I don't know that they landed on the best version, but I do really like the Mutodons themselves. But seeing the alternate designs, I'm like, oh my God, there's some really incredible looking things in there. They do mention that the JP3 Raptor scales are used on the side of the face. It's really hard to tell that, but when you look up close, sure, I guess you can see them. They did wonder if they were trying too hard, which I thought was kind of funny. They talk about the Mini Mart, like I said, getting the performers in there. We do get to see the puppeteer performer who actually was the Mutodon, just kind of roaming through there. And I love that design. It's not really a full design or anything. They've got dinosaur feet on and like claws, and it's like massive head on a helmet. It's kind of pointy and big and beefy, and it's just cool. It looks shadowy, like this shadowy, monster kind of lurking through the mini mart there. And I gotta say, I feel like I need to talk to Tim Nielsen here, because I think he's sound designer. I don't know if that was the exact title, but the sound work here for the Mutodon was great, because he talked about an oven mitt on a countertop. Hilarious that's like the main design or sound design there for the Mutodon. You can come up with some wild experimentations, to give you the sounds for these dinosaurs. All you got to do is pitch them up, pitch them down, whatever you got to do, and layer them in with other things, and you can create something that's terrifying sounding, like the Mutodon. And after 7 movies now, it's got to be difficult to come up with unique sounds for these dinosaurs. So give it up to Tim there for using the oven mitt on the countertop. They talk about the tunnels, and I really liked hearing Mahershala talk about just being tall and trying to walk through the tunnels, so that was funny to me. And then they talk about the Distortus and not really knowing what was even inside the head. That's funny. Okay. They talk about it being a bit clumsy and just kind of like bumping into things and just, clumsily going through the jungle and stuff. And I can't really say that it gave that kind of sense for me. Like, I think it was pretty, like, accurate, and just, it was working well. It seemed like, to me, it didn't seem like it was barreling through and stumbling through the jungle or anything. So I wish they kind of leaned into that a little bit more. And they did also talk about like one of the arms is damaged, and I don't think they really relate it too well. I think that would have been so cool though to see it like clumsily bumping into stuff and just barreling through. I feel like the Indominus did that a bit more, just barreling through stuff, and I didn't really get that sense here. Obviously the Distortus didn't really have a lot to do in this movie, but yeah. Oh, also Gareth talked about wanting to add some sadness to the D-Rex, and and I feel like that was the mentality that they brought to the Indominus. And I get that from the Indominus, to be honest. I know it's kind of like a killing machine in that movie and all, but at the end of that movie, when it does get taken under, I'm like, dude, that thing did not know what it was doing. So to me, I get it more from the Indominus than I do from the D-Rex. So I really wish they leaned into that a little bit more too. And then Tim talks about the sound design on the D-Rex, basing it off of pugs and French bulldogs, dogs that like have a hard time breathing. So yeah, it definitely gives that sense there. So I like that. And this was a good one. This was a longer one. So I don't know if this is like the documentary that's featured on the DVD, but who knows? If you add all of these together, they're all pretty long. They kind of get like longer and longer. I feel like they start at like 6 or 7 minutes or 8 minutes, and then they work their way to 9 and 10. So doing pretty well here on content. And look, I know there's a lot still to come, and I've already gone through a lot, but we do have the gag reel. There's nothing really to mention here, but I found it funny. I was actually laughing a bit at it, and it's very, very short, so don't expect a ton, but I think this was a better gag reel than we've gotten a lot in recent years. So I also don't know how Jonathan Bailey kept losing his glasses, because like I wear glasses too, and my glasses aren't just flying off my face all the time. But his were. So good work, Jonathan. I don't know how you did it. But moving on. So getting back to it after the gag reel there, we get to meet Dolores in this little featurette. It was a short one, but it features Audrina Miranda kind of going out to meet Dolores, the animatronic, for the first time. And I don't think that like the animatronic made it into the movie at all, but I love this animatronic. It's so cute. There's apparently 2 animatronics and then a puppet, and I absolutely want that thing on my shoulder, and I want to cuddle it because it looks so cute. It looks so real, and that's what they talked about a lot, that any days that had the animatronic on it, it would extend their days because everybody would want to stop and pet the thing and talk to it for a little bit. And I love that the dudes with the controller were just like so nice to everybody and just would sit there and make everybody believe this thing was real. So that was pretty great to hear, like people like Rupert Friend talk about it and Jonathan Bailey talk about how real it was. So I like this little featurette. It was a nice short one. And next up, we get to hear all about the deaths of Jurassic World Rebirth with the featurette Munched becoming dino food. How fitting. Now, this one was a fun one. It was kind of short, but it was a little bit longer than the Dolores one. But I just like hearing from the people themselves who got eaten. That was great. I mean, I like that because they all loved the fact that they got eaten. That was fun. You get to hear a little bit from Ed Skrein. I don't feel like he was in a lot of this stuff. So hearing him talking about the Spinosaurus death and working with the stunt team was pretty cool. We do get to hear just a little bit from Philippine and Bashir talking about their deaths with the Spino and Ketz as well. And a little bit more focused, not a lot more, but talking about Martin Krebs' death with the D-Rex. He was weirdly going into the smell of the rotting flesh in the D-Rex's mouth a little bit. So that was kind of weird. But and I also I was like cracking up that they did a like in memoriam that I don't know if anybody else watched Talking Dead back when like the Walking Dead was like huge, and they always did like an in memoriam for any character that died, and they did that here for all the characters that died in this movie, and I thought that was pretty funny. So there you go. That was Munched becoming dino food.
Hi everybody, I'm Audrina Miranda, Isabella Delgado, in Jurassic World Rebirth. When we were shooting the film, I had all kinds of questions about what would the dinosaurs sound like. their footsteps, their roars, and the filmmaker said, rather than tell you, why don't we show you? And guess what? They weren't kidding, because today I got invited to Skywalker Sound in California to meet some of the amazing team that created those sounds and get the answers to all my questions. So join me and get ready to hear Jurassic like you've never heard it before. Hello.
Hello.
I'm Audrina.
Hi, I'm Tim Nielsen. I'm the sound designer here at Skywalker. Welcome.
Thank you. Can
How
I
are you
sit
doing?
down?
You certainly can. I hear you want to learn about dinosaur sounds.
I do. They sound really cool, so I want to know more that goes into it.
All right. The big part of my job is to go around, even around the world, and record sound effects. We build a library of sounds to have at my disposal for making sounds. We have almost 1 million sound effects here in our library.
Wow.
And we have all kinds of animal sounds, which are typically what we start with when we want to make a dinosaur. We start with animals because dinosaurs were animals. We assumed that they sounded like animals. And so we try to record a lot of things. So we record things like leopards. And we have this sound, which is a baby seal, which we recorded. It's a tiny baby seal that's been in the rescue center in Sausalito. So on this show, we've had special kind of dogs, little tiny pugs and French bulldogs recorded.
I have a
for
French
us.
bulldog.
Do you really? They, you know they have like crazy
Yep.
sounds. Well, the D-Rex is made partly up of a French bulldog.
Now, I really, really dig this one. This was called A Day at Skywalker Sound. This one was awesome. It was featuring Audrina Miranda, who plays Isabella in the movie. And we got to hear her go out, or get to see her go out to Skywalker Sound, sit down with a bunch of the professionals that work out there, take a look and get some insight into how the dinosaur sounds were made, how they did the Foley on the movie, and how they like mix the sounds and everything. It was so cool. This is the kind of insight that I'm looking for. And they spent a decent amount of time. It was about a 10-minute production there. And we get to hear her sit down with Tim Nielsen, who I've mentioned a few times here, and hear him play some audio effects, and then hear, like, we actually got to see like how they recorded them and see the animals and stuff that were recorded for the sounds that he was playing there in the studio. So that was pretty cool. And we got to see him do a few things, like he was blowing like an air can into a can of slime, and it came out with like a really cool effect that, you know, they could translate into something else later down the line. And Audrina actually got to do like a bird call, and they pitched it down and then added some reverb and then some other sound effect that kind of chopped it up a little bit. And then you could see Tim hitting the piano to, you know, to affect it, and then also pitching pitching the bend, or bending the pitch. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Bending the pitch a little bit, which was really cool. And it came out great. And they actually used it in the movie, and they played that scene from the movie. So I love that stuff. That's cool. And then we got to see her go to that Foley stage and step on some branches and some leaves and stuff, and kind of follow the footsteps that she took in the movie, which I think she did a phenomenal job following that. That was pretty fantastic. It's almost like, I don't know if they did it a few times or not, but like she did it perfectly on take number 1. So that was really cool. And then see her do like the sound effects there for Dolores walking through the jungle as well. That was cool. And then she got to go out to like the mixing room and just kind of balance some audio and hear how that's done, and get to hear like, what does the microphone pick up on the set, and how much of that can they actually use? And then to hear like, oh, what's the sound effect sound like for the crunch of the dinosaur, or, you know, there were so many different like things that go into it, and you get to see all the switches move, which is cool. And then balance that all with the music. So that was pretty fantastic. I really dug that. I was excited to see this in there, and to see that it was actually like a hefty portion of a little featurette there.
3, 2, 1, action!
The Essex is one of the characters of the movie. Was used as a military vehicle or a patrol boat at some point. It came in this like drab gray, and we wanted to give it some color, give it some jazz. There's a little something you may notice as far as our paintwork goes. The back, maybe 10% of the vehicle itself is painted in this red, and we've actually matched that red to a security vehicle you might have seen in Jurassic Park 1, which has this beautiful kind of orangey, rusty red, and we just thought it'd be a nice little nod to the original film.
And I'm not going to say we're winding down, but we are on the final featurette, which is hunting for Easter eggs. Now, I was really looking forward to this. It's a little bit longer, not too long, but it does showcase some good stuff and stuff that I actually didn't notice before too much in the movie. But I'm not going to dive into really all of them at all, and I don't want to spoil some of the fun, but there's so much Jaws in this movie, and it's kind of wild. There's like license plates and something of Quince in the movie, and patches and all kinds of different stuff. Postcards. Specifically, in the mini mart, there's a postcard of Jaws. I don't know if you can even see this stuff in the movie, but there's also a postcard which I think we've seen somewhere else. They showcase this, but there's the iconic Jurassic Park like background of the trees, like in silhouette with the red, sunset or whatever that is, and that image is so iconic. But it was just, brushed over. They showcased the Jaws postcard instead of that awesome Jurassic one, and I was like, no, don't go back. So I wish there was a little bit more detail here, because it looks like there's so much great stuff that I really want to take a look at. I love the Easter eggs that are on, and there's like 2 of them that are on Isabella's shirt. Really, really cool stuff there. And there's an Alan Grant Easter egg that I never caught before this moment, and it adds some great context, I think, to Grant, to Loomis. It's a awesome detail, and now that I have seen it here, I got to go back and watch the movie and just keep an eye out. And there's a license plate nod to Gareth Edwards. That's really awesome. Obviously, we all saw the Michael Crichton school bus there, and there's also around that moment, there's a fun detail that it's like a nice story relating to an old director that directed a film or 2 in the Jurassic franchise. I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. And there's in the mini mart, we've seen this one before, I believe, but the 18th anniversary of Back to the Future, there's like a magazine on the shelf there. I'm trying to like come up with the time. When was the 18th anniversary? It was definitely not what they said it was, but what they said this movie like took place. So 1985 plus 18. I'm not good with math, everybody. 2003. So it's a little off, because I think 17 years. If the movie's 2027, right, which was 5 years after 2022, which was Jurassic World Dominion, then 17 years earlier would have been 2010. But if it was 2025, like they say, this is current day, then that's 2008. So it was still a little off of the 2003 18th anniversary of Jurassic Park. Or, I'm sorry, not Jurassic Park, but Back to the Future. Back to the Future, one of my all-time favorite movies, and certainly one of them, if you get my hint. But yeah, I don't know. That's a weird nod right there, because the 18th anniversary is like right there, right out in front. So I'm not sure how long that was sitting on the shelf. Nobody bought it for a few years, but yeah, it was there. Also, there was some Mattel and Funko Jurassic stuff, so that was cool to see, and some other things like keychains and different things. So yeah, really cool stuff. I just wish they dove even more into the Easter eggs, but that was the final featurette there, and just so much stuff. I relayed a lot of information there, but the biggest chunk, which I'm now like, well, we're almost near the hour mark probably here, and we now are going to dive into those feature commentaries. The first one with Gareth Edwards, Jack Ravenscroft, the first assistant director, James Klein, the production designer, and James was in that Easter eggs one quite a bit. And I love that for this commentary, Jack Ravenscroft had not even seen the finalized film, up until this moment. So there was a lot of really great moments where he's just like, whoa, wow, like this is crazy. I love this scene. This is awesome. So that was pretty cool. Gareth Edwards really wanted to utilize the original Jurassic Park Universal logo, which to me as well, that's like the iconic Universal logo. I know it's become this like really nice shiny thing, but seeing that old logo is just iconic. The entire intro with the monkeys and the background and everything are CG, which is just like mind blowing. They apparently, which they mentioned it a lot in both of these commentary, they couldn't film monkeys for some reason. I don't remember if they said why or not, but I also learned that they did 2 test screenings, just 2, and I think they were just like friends and family. It wasn't really like general audiences or anything like that. They did intend on doing like a gender swap with the D-Rex kill. It was supposed to be the woman who died first, but they didn't really like that, so they swapped it to the man. And yeah, so that was an interesting one. And you know, that's what he did in Godzilla. So I don't know if you wanted to change it from that too. And James Cline, I think. Oh, no, sorry. Gareth Edwards says this. I quoted this here. It says, Gareth says, "Now, James, this is technically the mosasaur from the previous films, in theory, unless we go with the theory that they bred more of them." And James responded curiously, like, "Oh, you're saying that this is the mosasaur from the first Jurassic World?" It's kind of weird. And Gareth goes on to say, like, "I'm going to just leave that to the audience to figure out." So, yeah, it's kind of weird, but they mention evolving the color and changing some aspects of it for sure. So they're knowingly, like, changing things and you know, changing the whole, like, look of it and everything. But it's, you know, I didn't really find that these special features and documentaries and commentaries and everything really helped me with the issues. They kind of just glossed over those things, and it just kind of went to show that they just, I don't know if they didn't know or didn't care to know or didn't have time to know or what the case was, but I found it interesting that they're, you know, he's actually saying, like, this is technically the mosasaur from the previous films. But then he's also like, well, unless, you know, unless we just say that it was bred, you know, there was other breedings going out there. I don't know. And they weren't even sure, you know, even just like the commentary from one of the ones, I think it was the Mini Mart one, that said, like, we don't even know what's in the head of the D-Rex. So that was all a weird one there. They talk a little bit about the mother and the father of the Delgado family, that they're potentially divorced, but the mother was maybe dead at one point, but they changed it because it was like every character in the movie had somebody die, so they kind of changed that up. So they left it a little bit more vague. And there was a comment, I don't know if I notated it or not. Maybe I'll mention it when I get there. But they did mention that they named it Dolores initially because they were going to name it after the mother, because maybe the mother had died, and that was like a nice nod to the mother. So that was kind of interesting. They did note that there wasn't enough time to storyboard everything. So there's another instance of, like, we really got to move. This movie's moving fast. And there were some Spinosaurus moments that were cut from the back of the boat. Gareth just didn't like what they shot, apparently. And some of it is in the trailer. We do see it there. And I think the line itself was like, none of what you just said sounds good. I think Scarlett says that in the trailer. So, and they did mention a lot during the commentaries that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that was kind of cut, but not necessarily cut, but short. Well, I guess it was cut, but they compressed a lot of scenes. They shortened scenes and apparently lost about 30% of, like, all the scenes. I don't know. That sounds like a lot, but they kind of probably trimmed, like, a bit from the ends and beginnings and whatnot, and shortened all these scenes up a little bit. But there's an interesting thing here. So while Xavier, you know, had to use the bathroom in the middle of the jungle, the Mutodon originally crawled down from the tree and didn't kill him, but kind of, like, I guess, sniffed around him and stuff and just kind of, like, teased killing him. But they thought that made the Mutodons less scary. So I think everything that you see in that scene is him reacting to a Mutodon coming down from the tree, like descending down creepily, and just kind of, like, you know, creepily, like, stalking around him. So that's interesting when you view it that way. So I think they did the better option, though, because they're right. Like, it would have definitely made the Mutodon less scary. So, A nice detail here that I liked was that Gareth Edwards played the Godzilla -1 score while the Titanosaur leg scene was being filmed with Dr. Henry Loomis there, with Jonathan Bailey, really trying to evoke some emotional stuff there. So I'll have to go through that Godzilla -1 score and see, what they could have used there. I forget if they mentioned exactly what it was, but yeah, that was cool. And then they mentioned something that made me angry, that the color schemes on the other dinosaurs that we see in this movie were variants for the Rex at one time. And Spielberg picked the final design of the Rex, and they notated that, like, I think around the time where we see the compies, and I'm like, dude, the compy design, it's like black and red. That's awesome. And I had talked about that before the movie came out. Like, I really wish they would have gone for a little bit more of an inspired design with the Rex. The Rex looks incredible. Don't get me wrong. The design is fantastic. I love how big and, bull-like that T-Rex is. And the skin tones and everything that they used, the color choices and the patterns on the skin, everything looks fantastic. No qualms there. It looks great. But if they had gone with a black and red design, dude, I would have been, on the ground. It would have been so awesome. But they did not do that. They used it on the compy instead. So I'm glad they at least used it. They note that they couldn't get the metallic case that they used. So they used that case for the dinosaur DNA, but they had a hard time getting metallic cases into the UK because of the war in Ukraine. Now, that was allegedly, they said. They weren't really sure, but that was the excuse that they had heard. So that's kind of interesting there. I'm not really sure why. Somebody will have to inform me there. But Tom, what's up? Do you know? You're in the UK. The bulldozer for the prologue is in the film later on. I didn't even put two and two together. So, and when I say the prologue, they initially had it in that. That's the word I was looking for earlier. It was like, I kept saying like they were like destroying the jungle with the big machinery. Bulldozer's the word. And they used that initially in the extended, intro, and then cut it. But it is later on in the film, we do see the big rigs, out there when they go through like some of the fencing and stuff, when they start to get towards the facilities. And that's cool that it is actually there later on in the film. And yeah, so the convenience store scene is only flooded for the reflection shot, apparently. So I thought that was cool because it's interesting that it is flooded. I'm not really sure how it is flooded because there is that grate in the ground. So unless like it had just rained, I was thinking about this while watching and listening to them talk about it. I was like, why is it flooded? Because there's that grate in the ground that's, flowing the water down into the tunnels. But it's flooded. I don't really understand. So maybe it had just rained. I don't know. But they mentioned that it was only for the reflections and stuff like that. And initially, Gareth wanted to flood the like entire town and have this like whole deep water section. And I'm like, that would have been just so much water in this movie. But so I'm kind of glad they didn't do that. And for the lab scene that's later on in the film, that right there, they just took sledgehammers to the original lab set and also brought in some set dressing that was like destroyed items and stuff like that. But I like that they actually like sledgehammered some stuff and just destroyed it to give it that aged look. So that was pretty cool. And the D-Rex shot that you see from that lab, at the end of the film, Dr. Henry Loomis sees the D-Rex walk by. It was initially out of the film, but they kind of needed a little bit more setup, which I agree to because it kind of just would have came out of nowhere. So I wonder because it's not very clear to me what that space is. And every time I watch the movie, I try to wonder what is going on there. I really need to pause it and just kind of look at what the computers are showing me. There's like diagrams of like what the different areas are and what's getting shut down and stuff, because I just don't understand. They go through one door, there's like a holding area, and then there's another big door. What is after that big door? Because when we see it in the later scene, it looks like it's outdoors, but I don't really get that vibe in the beginning, so I'm just very unsure. I would love some explanation if they like wanted to talk about that. That would be really, really cool. And this commentary with Jack and James and Gareth was recorded about a month before the film's release. So they did note that they also had 12 weeks of prep for this movie. So very, very short amount of time. But that was everything that I really gathered. There's a ton of information in this commentary, but those were the things that I noted as interesting facts. So I'll keep those in my notes for future, tidbits of information. But let's move on to the second commentary. Now, this commentary featured again Gareth Edwards, and then editor Jabez Olsen, I believe, and visual effects supervisor and second unit director David Vickery. This one was recorded May 2025, which is probably around that same time. I forget which one they said came first. There was some discussion about that during this one, I believe. They talk about the two-headed triceratops, and they call it a hexatops. I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. And they said that those were on set. The trike and the raptor were both on set. And they did apparently use a different candy raptor candy wrapper for a little bit, but then switched it out to the Snickers. And they joked a little bit about did Snickers know what you were going to be doing? Like destroying this park with their candy wrapper. They talk about the Mutadons and that they were finalized just before Christmas. So that was, not very long. It was, 8 months, I guess, maybe before the film's release. So, and the text actually at the beginning of the movie was a last-minute addition written by David Koepp himself. So, yeah, they kept going into the friends and family test screenings that they did, which prompted them to add the text and a few other things. They kept mentioning that, people wanted to know more about the connection between this film and the last, which I was finding interesting. I'm like, yeah, we want to know what are the connections between these films. Not just text on the screen. So they opted to go with the text on the screen, apparently, and David Koepp actually wrote it. But it's all so similar, it's exactly what we hear in the movie. It's exactly what was in the synopsis. So it's surprising that that's what they added for me. But they did also talk about some other stuff later on. I'll get to that. But they mentioned that there were 1,500 VFX shots in the film. 700 of them were dinosaurs. So that's a lot because there were way less in Jurassic Park. The video that we see in the museum was based on 1950s animation style, but they also mentioned Disney's Epcot among other things. So I thought that was interesting. I'm trying to think to Epcot and what could that have been in reference to? I'm trying to think of I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Life, what was that pavilion called? Wonders of Life Pavilion. Maybe there were some videos there. Oh, you know what? It could have been Universe of Energy, maybe, or something like that, because there were the dinosaurs there. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I'm not really sure because of early Epcot stuff. And I can't really think of a lot of videos, but that's cool though. I love hearing Epcot shout out there. Very unexpected. And they were, I like this tidbit here because I'm like, yeah, I also don't think you did spend the right amount of time. But they talked about they were unsure if they spent the correct amount of time on the mints that are in the movie and just how much, crunching Jonathan Bailey did. And I found this fascinating because there were a few moments where they kind of were questioning, I don't know if we did this right or not, and we'll find out. We don't know because the movie's not out yet. We don't know if any of you like it or not. So I found that kind of interesting because, I do think a majority of people really love the movie, and I do think there's valid criticisms too. So I'd love to know, what do they think about some of the criticisms that have been thrown out there about the movie? So the mints, I think they spent too much time on the mints, but that's just me. They said they had 2 months less post-production time than the other Jurassic films. So that was kind of interesting. You know, they talk about, we only had 12 weeks of prep for this movie. And there was something else, I forget what I mentioned before, but they also had 2 months less time at the end of the project. So interesting. They also considered cutting the chat between Dr. Henry Loomis and Zora Bennett on the front of the boat at nighttime, which I really like that scene. But they said, again, that people wanted to know more about the characters, and, you know, some of the dialogue could have been cut at different times between Duncan and Zora as well. But people wanted to see these characters talk, and I think that's great. I'm glad that these people like really said like we want to hear stuff like this. So that was cool. Outside of the text, I don't think they said they wanted text, but who knows? A scene never shot was Martin Krebs turning the Mayday radio off. Yeah, that definitely would have been a little bit more evil. So I'm glad they did what they did. I think I like that more of him just like subtly becoming a bad guy in that way, you know, by not pushing her off the boat, but also not saving her. So yeah, interesting stuff there. I think they made the better choice there. But the Essex scenes from the shooting sequence to crashing were originally about twice as long. So I found that kind of interesting there. So when they were shooting the Mosasaur to when the ship crashed, it was initially about twice as long. And we did hear, I think, in the other commentary that they did cut about 30% of a lot of the scenes. So that makes sense there. There's a helicopter shot, like circling the boat. And apparently it was all completely CG. So even like Scarlet walking around the side of the boat, I forget if they mentioned it or if this is even the exact same moment or not, but they like said like they had to match it up to show like a character moving from one space to the next. So I appreciate that. And it looks phenomenal. Like they talked so much about the VFX here and just how much the water looked so incredible and stuff. And just everywhere, like they extended every shot and like painted over so much stuff, and like all of Dolores and just having like human characters. Just it's wild how much they, you know, put into this 1,500 VFX shots. So it's crazy stuff. Gareth also does not like cute things in movies, and that was a reference to the Aqualops and Aqualops. And he usually doesn't like that stuff, but this was Steven's idea, so it's got to be in the movie. His idea specifically for the Aqualops. I think they wanted to try some other stuff, but like Steven's like, nah, it's got to be that thing. There's also a scene where, this is wild, like, and I think they filmed it too, it sounds like. So where Krebs sees the gun up in the helicopter, and I think he like pokes the gun, and like a bunch of bodies fall out of the helicopter and like land on him. So that's kind of wild. And I think David Vickery was I think he was the pilot himself. So that would have been a wild scene. I'm glad they didn't do that. And I love that they just like teased him looking at the gun, and then you don't know like that he has the gun until he pulls it like later on. So I think that was definitely the better choice there. Gareth, you know, owned up to the fact that he didn't know the river raft sequence was originally part of the original novel and almost used in the first movie. So that's okay. Look, I mean, you can't remember everything from a novel. I tend to forget a lot of those facts as well. And if you only read it once back in the day, how could you remember? You know, not everybody's like us. So that's fine. I'm not going to fault him too much there, because he does say in one of the featurettes, like I had to get this right. You know, I knew I had to get this right because the fans were really expecting us to. So he knew at one point or another, he figured it out. The Dilo scene was originally written as a Junior Rex. So that is more in line with the original writings in the book. So I think that's what, like, they were fighting over the carcass or something, and that distracted him and got him noticing the boat, if I remember correctly. I forget. It could not be that at all. Who knows? See, I don't even remember. Was this scene even in the book? I don't know. The inflate on land label was added in post. I thought that was fun. It was just to give Teresa like an out, because people would probably be like, well, why is she opening it up on the dock? That's dumb. And why didn't she open it up on the water? Well, they added that on there because, like, you got to open it up on the dry land. Otherwise, it would just not open up correctly. So they were giving her an out for people to be like, oh, that's why, because it says it on the boat. That's what you got to do. And I didn't even question it. I saw it on the boat. I'm like, that's what you got to do. Some of the clifftop dialogue was originally cut out. So, yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I don't even know why I wrote that. They did mention some of the toys and like trying to get these toys completed when they were talking about the Mutadons. And they did say, I don't know how much control he has over this, but I think Gareth or somebody mentioned that they are planning to do Mutadon toys at a later cycle. So we do have that to maybe look forward to at some point. They originally had the radio blasting instead of the car alarm. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think the alarm was in reference to the Lost World novel, if I remember correctly. I don't remember. But see, look, I don't even know. We're not all like myself, but you probably remember. But I don't like the alarm. The alarm's fine. I mean, it's fine the way it is, but I do wish it was the radio. I think that would have been better. I would have been totally cool with another radio drop or needle drop, but I think the song they said it was like an inappropriate song to be blasting at that moment, which any song would have been. But I'm glad it didn't turn out to be like some like crazy inappropriate song that we didn't need in a Jurassic movie. So I'm glad, I guess, we got the alarm blaring, but I think you could have done like the Stand By Me or something like that, like a decent song that, could have been in that scene instead of just an alarm blaring or an, inappropriate song. And yeah, I wrote here, they were, throughout this, they were unsure if people were going to like the movie. So yeah, interesting. I don't think that says anything in regards to, like, I think they were just questioning it out loud. I don't think they really had concerns or anything, but interesting to hear them talk about it so often throughout the commentary there, that they were unsure. But, some good information there. I had appreciated both of these commentaries. I think they were both pretty insightful. And like I said, there's so much more. If you're just listening to me recap it, go watch them when you get the 4K, or if you get the digital, go check them out, because there's some really good stuff in there. Like I said, the raft sequence, like seeing that all come to fruition is a miracle. And hearing them talk about it directly in these commentaries about what was filmed where and how many times it like flip-flops back and forth is pretty wild. So I loved hearing that stuff about what was shot where, and that was all really, really cool. So I appreciate Gareth and all the others for recording these commentaries and putting them on the digital copy there. So thank you so much for indulging in me talking about these for way too long, over an hour of just me talking. This is what I do normally. This is like me on the live streams. This is what I do on the live streams. I actually talked about some of these things on the live stream, but this one was way more in depth. So I appreciate you sitting here for over an hour listening to me talk about this. Thank you to Phil. Shout out Phil for the opportunity. Yeah, I think I appreciate this movie a little bit more now. Thanks, Special Features.
Life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but, well, there it is. There it is. I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
That'll do it for another episode of the Jurassic Park Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and sharing in our love of the Jurassic franchise, and most certainly the digital copies bonus features that are out right now. These came out back on, August 5th, I believe. And who knows, the 4K is coming on September 9th, so stay tuned for that. There might be some different stuff. I don't really know. Like I said, it features a documentary I don't know if it's different or if it's just a combined thing. I haven't really looked into it too much, to be honest. But I'm excited to get the physical copy myself. I'll be getting that 4K, maybe the Steelbook, I don't know. And then I'll get that digital copy for myself. I appreciate being able to see it, though. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. You probably did not know that this episode was going to shout you out a few times, but got to shout you out, of course. I don't know if you saw that I watched it or not, but I did. Anyway, I appreciate being able to watch this, and because I wasn't sure, because I typically buy like the 4K when it comes to like a big release. Usually Jurassic, some Marvel, Star Wars for sure, Indiana Jones, stuff like that. That like I really need to have this physical copy. Most of the time, I'm fine with the digital ones, but you know, they make it tougher and tougher these days for me to be like, oh, I really want that digital copy, but it comes out so early in comparison to the 4K. In this case, it was only about a month's difference, so not too bad there. And, you know, and watching, I've had a chance to watch it like 6 times now, in theaters 3, at home 3, so I'm having a good time now. And I certainly think that these, you know, special features and everything have given me a better appreciation, so I'm definitely down with that. So, you know, I still have my issues with the movie, but I'm having a good time with it for sure. But thank you again to everybody for listening to this. Hopefully it was up your alley. I know it's not always everybody's cup of tea to just listen to me talk straight the entire time with no guests or anything, but whatever. You're here. Maybe you're not. I don't know. I'll never know. That's the thing. But thank you, as always, to our podcast host, Podomatic, for giving us a place to upload the podcast each and every week. Everybody out there, please know that you matter. Stay safe, be kind, fight for representation, change, and equality in the Jurassic franchise. But more importantly, outside of it, in the real world. It's especially needed these days. Let's make sure to make this world a better place. I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to myself for the outro. Take it away.
Saddle up, let's get this movable feast underway.
Continue the conversation with us on Threads and Instagram. Watch our content on TikTok and YouTube. Find us on the web at JurassicParkPodcast.com. You'll find today's episode show notes, articles, contributor bios, and so much more. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our website, and wherever else podcasts are found. So please be sure to follow along and share with your friends, family, and fellow Jurassic fans. If you haven't already, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We will read your Apple reviews at the end of most episodes, so be sure to spare no expense. Don't miss our Wednesday night live streams, toy hunts, reviews, in-depth bonus content, gameplay, event and theme park coverage on our YouTube channel. If you want to get a hold of us or participate in the Jurassic mailbag, you can fill out the contact form on our website or send emails and MP3s to JurassicParkPod@gmail.com. Feel free to call our voicemail line at any time to leave us a message or just to say hi. That number is 732-825-7763. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, enjoy.